And what if I told you that what happens to your soul after cremation could determine your entire next spiritual journey? Did you know that 78% of people today choose cremation, but 99% of ancient spiritual traditions considered it a dangerous interference with the natural death process? In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal shocking discoveries about how cremation impacts your soul, real-life cases of post-death communications that will leave you speechless, and most importantly, how you can consciously prepare for whatever choice you make. If this content is sparking your curiosity, hit that like button now, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any spiritual revelations that could transform your understanding of life and death. And tell me in the comments, have you ever thought about what truly happens to your essence after leaving the physical body? Imagine for a moment you're in ancient Egypt 4,000 years ago. A pharaoh has just died, and an entire army of priests begins a meticulous ritual that will last 70 days. Every step is calculated, every prayer has a specific purpose, to ensure the pharaoh's soul has a smooth transition to the afterlife. Did they know something we've forgotten? In Tibet, even today, when someone dies, monks begin a 49-day accompaniment process. They believe the soul remains in an intermediate state, the bardo, where it needs guidance and time to adjust to the new reality. Native Americans had 4-day rituals, always respecting the soulful time to disconnect from the physical body. But what did all these ancient traditions have in common? They all considered death a gradual process, not an instant event. And all of them, without exception, preserved the physical body during this transition period, understanding that there's an energetic connection that needs to be respected. Siberian shamans spent weeks preparing the body with sacred herbs, creating an environment of energetic protection around the deceased. In ancient India, Vedic texts described specific rituals lasting up to 13 days, a period considered necessary for the soul to complete its journey of detachment from the physical plane. But here's what impresses me most. Civilizations that never had contact with each other reached the same conclusions about the importance of preserving the body during transition. The Mayans, the Celts, the Australian Aborigines all developed traditions that respected this sacred period of farewell. Now compare that to our modern approach. Body cremated in a matter of hours, sometimes on the same day as death. Ashes delivered in an urn, process complete. Are we missing something fundamental in all this haste? The burning question is, what really happens to a soul when its body is suddenly transformed into ashes before it has time to adjust to the new reality? To understand the impact of cremation, we first need to grasp how the natural process of death works according to the oldest spiritual traditions on the planet. And get ready, because this will completely change your perspective on what we call death. Death isn't a switch that turns off instantly. It's more like a dimmer that gradually reduces the light's intensity. According to Tibetan teachings, when the physical body stops functioning, consciousness goes through several stages of disconnection that can last days or even weeks. Imagine you've lived your entire life in an apartment. You know every room, every piece of furniture, every sound. Suddenly you have to move. Even though you know you're leaving, you can't just switch off your emotional connection to that space overnight, right? You need time to say goodbye, to mentally adjust to the change. Something similar happens with the soul, but infinitely more complex. For decades, or even an entire lifetime, our consciousness has been intimately connected to the physical body. Every emotion, every thought, every memory was intertwined with bodily sensations. Death represents the biggest adjustment a consciousness can make. Tibetans identified that in the first 4 days after physical death, the soul still maintains a strong connection to the body. It's as if it still feels the body, still tries to inhabit it. Between the 4th and 7th day, it begins to realize that something has dramatically changed, and only after a week does it truly understand that it can no longer return to that body. But here's the crucial point. Throughout this entire period, the physical body serves as an energetic anchor, a point of reference for the transitioning soul. It's like having a map in unknown territory. The ancient Egyptians called this process navigation between worlds. They believed the soul needed familiar landmarks so it wouldn't get lost on the journey to the afterlife. The mummified body functioned as a beacon, a secure connection to the known world, while the soul explored unknown territories. On the first day after death, according to these traditions, the soul is still so connected to the body that it may even try to return to it. On the third day, it begins to realize that something fundamental has changed. On the seventh day, the process of accepting the new condition begins, and only after 21 to 49 days, depending on the tradition, does the soul fully complete its transition to the spiritual plane. Now imagine what happens when, in the midst of this delicate and natural process, the physical body, the only reference the soul has, is suddenly disintegrated by fire. Now I'm going to tell you a real story that will give you chills. Maria, a 65-year-old woman from São Paulo, lost her father in a car accident. Following his wishes, she opted for cremation the day after his passing. 2 weeks later, Maria started having disturbing dreams. In the dream, she saw her father walking through the old house, opening drawers, rummaging through cabinets, as if he was desperately looking for something. He seemed confused, lost. When Maria tried to talk to him in the dream, he looked at her with an expression of complete incomprehension, as if he couldn't understand where he was or what was happening. The dreams repeated for weeks. Always the same scene, her father looking for something, rummaging through objects, with an expression of complete disorientation. In one of the most disturbing dreams, he looked directly at Maria and said, "Where's my body? I can't find myself." Intrigued and concerned, Maria sought out an experienced medium. The first thing the medium said was, "Your father is disoriented. He was disconnected from his body too quickly and now can't locate himself energetically." This isn't an isolated case. For years documenting post-death experiences, I've found that experienced mediums consistently report that souls of people cremated too quickly after death frequently show signs of confusion and disorientation in their first spiritual contacts. It's as if they were woken up in the middle of a deep sleep and placed in a completely strange environment. Imagine you're sleeping soundly in your bed. Suddenly, someone picks you up while you're still dreaming and places you in the middle of an unknown forest. You'd wake up completely lost, not knowing where you are, how you got there, or what to do next. This is exactly the experience reported by many souls who went through premature cremation. The medium who helped Maria explained, "The physical body, even after clinical death, maintains an energetic vibration that serves as a point of reference for the soul. When this body is cremated too quickly, it's like we've removed the only GPS the soul had to navigate this transition." But Maria's story had an even more revealing development. Following the medium's guidance, she performed a specific ritual to help her father orient himself spiritually. For 3 consecutive nights, she lit a candle, held a photo of him, and mentalized, "Father, you are safe, you are free, your body has fulfilled its purpose, and now you can move on in peace." On the 4th night, Maria had a completely different dream. Her father appeared serene and said, "Thank you, my daughter. Now I understand where I am and where I'm going." The disturbing dreams completely stopped. But the story doesn't end here, because there's something even more surprising happening with the ashes themselves. What I'm about to tell you defies everything we think we know about matter and energy. After cremation, ashes aren't just inert physical remains. They carry an energetic imprint, a kind of footprint of the person who was there. And the phenomena that happen around the ashes will surprise you. Let me tell you about the extraordinary case of Rose, from Minas Gerais. After her husband João was cremated, she kept his ashes in a wooden urn in the living room near the armchair where he used to read the newspaper every morning. 3 months later, Rose noticed something that made her question everything she knew about life and death. The plants around the urn began to flower exceptionally, even out of season. The fern that was almost dead, with yellowish, drooping leaves, gained a vibrant green color in a matter of weeks. The flowers that never did well in that corner of the house burst into colors Rose had never seen before. Initially, Rose thought it was a coincidence. Maybe she was watering the plants more because she was spending more time in that room. But then something happened that completely changed her perspective. The family decided to renovate the living room, and Rose had to move the urn to the bedroom. In 2 weeks, the plants in the first location returned to their previous state. Some even worsened. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, the small violet that was wilting on the window began to show the same exuberant growth that the living room plants had experienced. Rose became so intrigued that she decided to do an experiment. She moved the urn 2 more times, always observing the plant's behavior. The pattern repeated perfectly. Wherever João's ashes were placed, the surrounding plants showed exceptional growth. Cases like this are more common than we imagine, but they're rarely discussed openly. The ashes function as a concentrated, energetic anchor, maintaining an active connection with the person's essence. Unlike a buried body, which gradually decomposes, allowing for a natural and dispersed release of energy, the ashes keep this energy compacted in a reduced space. But here's the fascinating point I discovered through years of research. This energetic anchor can both help and hinder the soul's journey, depending entirely on how it's treated by the family. For some souls, the ashes serve as a point of orientation, a beacon that helps them maintain connection with the physical plane when necessary for communications or to finalize pending issues. It's like having a direct phone line between worlds. For other souls, especially those very attached to the material plane, the ashes can function as an invisible chain that hinders their advancement to higher planes of consciousness. It's as if the soul keeps visiting the ashes constantly instead of continuing its evolutionary journey. The crucial difference lies in the consciousness and intention of those caring for the ashes. Rose, after understanding what was happening, started talking daily to João's ashes, always reinforcing, "My love, you are free to follow your journey. These ashes are just a physical reminder of the love we shared." The result was extraordinary. Rose reported that she began to feel João's presence more subtly and peacefully, no longer that intense energy that made the plants grow abnormally. It was as if he had finally understood that he could detach from that physical anchor. But there's one more aspect of ashes that will impress you. What happens when they're divided or scattered? For years studying post-death communications, I've discovered fascinating patterns in messages from souls who went through the cremation process, and what they reveal will completely surprise you. Carlos, a 58-year-old accountant, died of a heart attack and was cremated 2 days later. 3 months after his passing, in a psychic session with his wife, he managed to establish clear communication. His first words were shocking. "I saw everything. I saw you putting me in that furnace. At first, it was scary, but then I understood it was necessary." What Carlos described completely changed my understanding of the cremation experience from the soul's perspective. He reported that, during the cremation process, his consciousness remained as an observer, watching the body's transformation from a higher perspective. "I was floating above the furnace," were his words transmitted through the medium. "I could see my body being transformed, but I didn't feel physical pain. It was more like watching a movie about myself." Unlike what many fear, he didn't feel physical suffering, but rather a kind of accelerated detachment that initially confused him. "It was like being pushed out of a house before I was ready to leave," were his exact words. "But then I realized that maybe I needed that push, because I was too attached to that form. It was hard to accept that that body was no longer mine." Other cremated souls report similar experiences through different mediums. They describe the moment of cremation as an acceleration portal, where they are forced to release attachments that might take much longer to be released naturally. It's like being thrown into deep water to learn to swim faster. But not all experiences are positive. Anna, a 67-year-old teacher, communicated through automatic writing that she experienced weeks of confusion and disorientation after her cremation. "I couldn't understand where my classroom was, my house, my students," she wrote. "It was as if all the references I knew had been erased." Other souls report similar periods of fragmentation, as if parts of their identity had been scattered and needed to be regrouped. One soul described it as trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle without having the box with the complete picture. The most interesting pattern I've identified is this. Souls who were spiritually prepared before cremation through prayers, rituals, or simply conversations about the process, show much greater ease of adaptation. It's as if conscious preparation creates a bridge between worlds, facilitating the transition. But there's an even more intriguing phenomenon that happens when ashes are divided. Here we come to one of the most complex and controversial aspects of the topic. What happens when ashes are divided among family members or scattered in different locations? Get ready for a revelation that can completely change your perspective on this seemingly innocent practice. I'm going to tell you about the Silva family, who made a decision they considered loving, but which led to unexpected consequences. When the family patriarch died at 74, the 4 children decided to divide the ashes equally, so each could have a part of their father at home. In addition, they scattered a portion of the ashes in the garden of the house where he lived for 40 years. The intention was beautiful, to keep their father present in everyone's lives. But 3 months later, disturbing things began to happen. Each child reported unsettling dreams where they saw their father trying to rejoin himself. In a recurring dream that all the children had independently, he appeared as a fragmented image, like a broken mirror trying to recompose itself. The eldest son described, "It was as if he was in pieces, trying to find himself. He stretched out his arms to us, but his hands disappeared before touching us." The eldest daughter, Marcia, began to have disturbing physical sensations whenever she was near the urn. It was a feeling that someone was incomplete, as if something important was missing, she reported. "Sometimes I felt like someone was calling me, but from afar, as if they couldn't reach me." Concerned, they consulted a spirituality expert who gave a revealing explanation. "You have energetically fragmented your father's earthly anchor. Imagine his soul is trying to use the ashes as a point of reference, but finds only scattered pieces. It's like trying to use a GPS with a fragmented signal. He can't fully locate himself." The specialist explained that when ashes are divided without adequate spiritual preparation, the soul can experience a sensation of dispersion that hinders its orientation in the spiritual plane. It's as if it tries to visit all parts at the same time, creating a fragmentation of its own energy. But here's the crucial point. Fragmentation isn't necessarily negative if done with consciousness and a clear spiritual purpose. The same specialist guided the family to perform a specific ritual where each child, on the same day and time, would light a candle and mentalize their father as a complete and unified being, regardless of the physical location of the ashes. Visualize him whole, in peace, connected with you through love, not through the ashes, was the guidance. Tell him that the ashes are just symbols of the love you shared, but that he is free to be spiritually complete. The result was surprising. After the ritual performed simultaneously by the family, the disturbing dreams completely stopped. Marcia reported that the feeling of incompleteness disappeared, and the family began to receive clear signs that her father was in peace and spiritually complete. Cases of ashes scattered in nature, oceans, mountains, gardens, generally show more positive results. Nature has a natural ability to harmonize and integrate fragmented energies, functioning as a unifying field that helps the soul reorganize itself energetically. But there's a specific practice that further enhances the benefits of scattering in nature. What I'm about to share now are ancient techniques adapted for our modern reality, which can completely transform the cremation experience for both the soul and the family. These rituals have the power to convert a potentially traumatic process into a sacred portal of spiritual elevation. The first and most powerful ritual is conscious preparation. Ideally, it should be done while the person is still alive, but it can be adapted even after death. It consists of open conversations about the cremation process, spiritually explaining what will happen, reassuring the soul about the temporary nature of the physical body. Let me tell you about Dona Ana, 78, who revolutionized her own departure experience. 6 months before dying of cancer, Ana decided to openly discuss her choice for cremation with her family. But she went far beyond a simple conversation. Ana created what she called my conscious farewell ritual. She recorded video messages explaining her decision, expressing gratitude for the physical body that served her for decades, and asking her family to treat her ashes with love and clear spiritual purpose. Most importantly, Anna spent weeks meditating and visualizing the cremation process as a sacred transformation, not destruction. "I visualized my body being transformed into pure light," she said in one of her videos. "I saw the fire not as destruction, but as the energy of the sun taking me back to the source." The result was extraordinary. During the psychic session held 1 month after her passing, Anna communicated that she experienced cremation as a purifying light bath and felt completely prepared for the transition. "It was like returning to the sun from where I came," were her transmitted words. Her family reported a sense of peace and completeness throughout the entire process, something I rarely witnessed in cases of cremation without preparation. The second fundamental ritual is the ceremony of accompaniment. During the cremation process, instead of simply leaving it in the crematorium's hands, the family can create a sacred environment even from a distance. Roberto's family, a 65-year-old engineer, notably applied this technique. During the 2 hours of cremation, they gathered at home, lit white candles, played spiritual music Roberto loved, and each person offered prayers or mantras, visualizing his soul being enveloped in golden light during the transformation. "It wasn't a moment of sadness," Roberto's wife reported. "It was as if we were participating in a sacred ceremony, accompanying him in his transformation." Later, Roberto communicated through a medium that he felt the loving presence of his family throughout the process, which immensely helped him in the transition. The third ritual is the conscious destiny of the ashes. Instead of making decisions based solely on emotion or convenience, the family can meditate and ask the deceased soul where it would like its ashes to be placed. Clara's family's experience was transformative. After her death, the family was divided on where to place the ashes. The daughter wanted to bury them in the family plot, the son wanted to scatter them at sea, and the husband wanted to keep them at home. Following spiritual guidance, they decided to meditate together for 3 nights, asking for a sign from Clara about her preference. On the 3rd night, everyone had dreams related to a small garden where Clara used to meditate. They interpreted this as a clear sign. They created a memorial garden in the backyard, where the ashes were placed under a tree Clara had planted years before. The result was magical. The tree, which was sick, fully recovered and began to bloom exuberantly. But the most transformative ritual of all is what I call programmed release. This ritual recognizes that ashes serve as a temporary bridge, but establishes a future moment where the soul will be completely liberated from any material connection, allowing its full evolution. Now let's explore something few people consider: how the choices we make regarding the body after death can influence not only the immediate transition of the soul, but its entire cycle of spiritual evolution and even its next incarnation. And what I'm about to reveal will completely transform your understanding of the long-term consequences of cremation. According to advanced esoteric traditions and reports from experienced mediums, the way a soul disconnects from the physical body creates energetic imprints that it carries into its next experiences. It's like creating a memory file that influences future patterns of spiritual behavior and even personality traits in future lives. Imagine your soul is like a musician learning to play different instruments. Each death experience is like learning a new musical technique. Conscious cremation teaches the soul the art of rapid transformation and adaptability, while traumatic cremation can create blockages that affect its ability to deal with changes in future incarnations. Souls who underwent conscious and prepared cremation tend to develop, in future lives, greater ease in dealing with changes and transformations. They learn at a deep level of consciousness that form is temporary and that essence transcends any physical manifestation. This can result in people who are more adaptable, less materially attached, and with a greater innate spiritual understanding. I'm going to tell you about a fascinating case I documented through memory regression. Marina, a 34-year-old artist, always showed an exceptional ability to adapt to changes. She moved cities 6 times, changed professions 3 times, and always faced these transitions with enthusiasm instead of anxiety. During a regression session, we discovered that in her previous life she had been a Tibetan monk who consciously chose cremation after decades of spiritual preparation. I remember the feeling of total freedom when I saw my body being transformed into light, Marina reported during the regression. It was as if I was finally free to be pure consciousness, without physical limitations. This conscious death experience created in her a programming of adaptability that she brought into this life. On the other hand, souls who went through traumatic or hasty cremation can develop patterns of anxiety related to sudden changes. In future lives, they may manifest inexplicable fears of fire, claustrophobia, or an excessive need for control over the physical environment. Jorge, a 45-year-old businessman, always had an inexplicable fear of fire and an obsession with preserving old objects. He couldn't throw anything away, accumulating documents, photos, old clothes. His house was a true museum of physical memories. During a regression session, he discovered that in his previous life he had been cremated against his will, in traumatic circumstances during a war. I remember being desperate, trying to scream that I wasn't dead yet, Jorge reported. There was confusion, and they cremated me too quickly. I felt like I was losing all my identity along with my body. This traumatic experience created in him a programming of excessive attachment to matter, as if he needed to cling to physical things to maintain his identity. But here's the most important revelation. None of this is definitive or irreversible. Human consciousness has an extraordinary capacity for healing and transformation that transcends any individual experience, including the form of death. The discovery was transformative for Jorge. Understanding the origin of his fears, he was able to consciously work to release these patterns. He performed rituals of forgiveness and understanding, visualizing his past life with compassion and acceptance. In 6 months of focused spiritual work, his fears drastically diminished, and he developed a much healthier relationship with changes and transformations. There's also an interesting pattern related to the speed of reincarnation. Souls who went through conscious cremation frequently report shorter periods in the spiritual plane before reincarnating. It's as if the experience of rapid transformation prepared them to return more quickly to learning through physical form. However, souls who went through traumatic cremation may remain longer in the spiritual plane, needing longer periods of healing and readjustment before feeling ready for a new incarnation. Some report decades or even centuries of spiritual work to overcome the traumas of transition. The message here is powerful. Even difficult experiences related to death and cremation can become opportunities for deep spiritual growth, both for the departing soul and for those who remain. What determines the impact isn't the method itself, but the level of consciousness and preparation involved in the process. What if I told you that you can, while still alive, program your afterlife experience to be as elevated and harmonious as possible? Regardless of choosing cremation, burial, or any other destiny for your physical body, there is a way to consciously prepare that can completely transform your transition experience. And the most incredible thing is that this preparation not only benefits you, but also all the people you love. The first fundamental preparation is what I call soul education. This means studying, understanding, and accepting the natural process of death as a natural part of the spiritual journey. The more you understand what truly happens during the transition, the less fear and resistance your soul will have at the moment of departure. Start with specific meditations on impermanence at least once a week. Dedicate 15 minutes to meditate on the fact that your body is temporary, but your essence is eternal. Visualize yourself disincarnating with ease, like someone taking off clothes that have become tight after a long day's work. These meditations create spiritual neural pathways that facilitate the actual transition when it happens. Dona Helena, 82, practiced these meditations for 5 years before she died. She told me, 2 years before passing, "I'm no longer afraid of death. In my meditations, I've practiced leaving my body so many times that it feels familiar now." When Helena died, her transition was so smooth that the family reported a feeling of extraordinary peace throughout the entire process. The second preparation is the spiritual will. In addition to a legal will, create a written or recorded document where you express your spiritual understandings, your conscious choices about the body's destiny, and most importantly, your intention to depart in peace and evolve spiritually. This document becomes an anchor of clarity for your soul in moments of possible confusion. Include messages like, I consciously choose cremation, understanding that my body is temporary and my soul is eternal. I ask my family to treat this process with love and spiritual understanding. Roberto created a video spiritual will that revolutionized his family's experience. He recorded 20 minutes explaining his vision of death, his choices about the body, and most importantly, asking his family to celebrate his departure as a spiritual graduation instead of mourning it as a loss. The impact was transformative. When Roberto died, instead of despair, the family felt a strange sense of joy and completeness. It was as if he was there with us, reminding us that he was just changing form, his wife reported. The third preparation, perhaps the most powerful, is the cultivation of detachment in life. The less attached you are to the material aspects of existence, the more easily your soul liberates itself at the moment of death. This doesn't mean living without love or care, but rather developing the ability to love intensely without completely identifying with forms. Practice gradual detachment exercises. Once a month, choose something material you're attached to. It could be an item of clothing, a decorative object, a book, and donate it to someone who can make better use of it. Observe your emotional reactions during this process. The more you practice letting go, the easier it becomes. But there's a specific preparation for those who choose cremation that can be revolutionary: the visualization of sacred transformation. Regularly, visualize your body being transformed into pure light through sacred fire. See this transformation not as destruction, but as spiritual alchemy, the lead of matter being transmuted into the gold of pure consciousness. Claudia, a 60-year-old teacher, practiced this visualization for 2 years before dying of cancer. During her chemotherapy sessions, she used the time to visualize her body being purified not only by the medications, but by a golden light that transformed it into pure energy. When Claudia died and was cremated, something extraordinary happened. During a psychic session a month later, she communicated that her cremation experience was like returning to the sun from where I came. She reported that, instead of resistance or fear, she felt an extraordinary expansion of consciousness during the process. It was as if each flame was a ray of light freeing me from the last bonds of matter, were her words transmitted through the medium. I felt like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, but the cocoon was my own body. The fourth essential preparation is communication with family. Talk openly about your choices, explain your spiritual reasons, and most importantly, prepare your loved ones to consciously participate in the process. A prepared family can transform a cremation into a sacred ritual of farewell. Include in your preparation the creation of personal rituals. Choose music you'd like played during the process, prayers or mantras that have meaning to you, and specific instructions on how you'd like your ashes to be handled. Conscious preparation not only facilitates your own transition, but becomes an invaluable gift for those who remain. Families who go through conscious cremation processes report much less trauma, more acceptance, and a sense of having participated in something sacred instead of just traumatic. We've reached the highest point of our journey, the understanding that, regardless of the choices we make for the physical body, our true nature transcends any form of manifestation. And this is the most important and transformative message you can take from this conversation for the rest of your life and beyond. Whether it's cremation, burial, or any other physical destiny, your essence, who you truly are, remains intact, eternal, and evolving. The experiences we discussed today are important, yes, but they're like different roads leading to the same sacred mountain. The realization of who you truly are beyond the body, beyond personality, beyond any material limitation. The soul that understands its true nature can transform any experience, including a cremation, into an opportunity for elevation. It's like a virtuoso musician who can use any instrument to create beautiful music. The important thing isn't the instrument, but the musician's mastery. Your consciousness is that mastery, and your body is just one of many instruments you'll use throughout your infinite journey. Think of all the stories we shared today. Maria and her disoriented father, Rose, and the flourishing plants around the ashes, the Silva family and energetic fragmentation, Carlos watching his own cremation, unconsciously preparing for departure. What differentiated the positive experiences from the negative ones wasn't necessarily the chosen method, but rather the level of consciousness, preparation, and love involved in the process. Consciousness transforms everything. A process that could be traumatic becomes sacred when approached with understanding. An experience that could lead to confusion becomes liberation when there's adequate preparation. A transition that could separate becomes unity when love is involved. This means you have absolute power over your death experience, regardless of external circumstances. Even in sudden or unforeseen situations, a prepared and elevated consciousness can navigate any transition with grace and wisdom. If you're hearing this and have already made decisions about your own post-death future, know that it's never too late to elevate those choices through consciousness. Start practicing the preparations we shared today. Talk to your family, create your spiritual will, develop your meditations on impermanence. If you're still deciding between cremation and other options, remember that the most important choice isn't cremation versus burial, but rather consciousness versus unconsciousness. A conscious cremation is infinitely superior to any other method done without spiritual preparation. And for your family members who will one day need to make these decisions for you, the most precious gift you can leave them is your own conscious spiritual preparation. A prepared soul facilitates the entire process for everyone involved, creating an experience of love and transcendence instead of trauma and separation. Death, ultimately, is just a change of state of consciousness. Like any change, it can be experienced with fear and resistance or with love and understanding. The choice is always yours, always has been, and always will be. No external circumstance can determine the quality of your spiritual experience if you cultivate the proper consciousness. Your consciousness is your most precious asset, your most powerful tool, and your most sublime destiny. Cultivate it with dedication, honor it with your choices, and it will transform not only your life, but also your death into experiences of indescribable beauty and continuous evolution. Remember, you are not a body that has a soul. You are a soul that is using a body. When it's time to return that body to the universe, whether through fire, earth, or any other element, you will remain intact, complete, and eternal. The form changes, but the essence remains. The instrument transforms, but the musician continues creating infinite symphonies of love and wisdom. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to access more stories like this. This is the deepest truth about cremation, about death, and about life. Everything is a temporary experience of an eternal consciousness that is always learning, always growing, always becoming more than it was. And no matter what path you choose, that consciousness which is you will continue its magnificent journey toward the complete realization of its infinite potential.